Alrighty, we are live. Excellent. Hi there. Thank you for being with us today. First and foremost, I want to say that I hope everyone is doing well, everyone is staying safe and healthy, and trying to get through this pandemic as best you can. My name is Kelsey Livingston. I am your host for this episode of Baton Rouge Gallery's Artist in Residences. This is a twice a week check-in with artists of all kinds, taking you into their home to explain the what, the how, and the why behind the art they make. For more than 50 years, Baton Rouge Gallery has worked to connect artists and audiences so that we can have a thriving arts community. Right now, since we can't invite you into our physical space, we are going to invite you into a virtual space. And our artist guests today are going to help with that by inviting you into their space to talk about what it is that they do. Hopefully, with everybody staying inside, we can get back to our first Wednesdays, our Sundays at 4, our Articulate talks sooner rather than later. In the meantime, this is what we get to do to connect with our artists. I want to take a minute to thank Breck for our home in City Park. We have been their partner for over 30 years, and we could not do everything that we do without their support. So thank you, Breck. I also want to make note that none of this is possible without our members and donors. So thank you for all of that support, community members and donors of all kinds. If you are not a member, I am going to encourage you to do so. Hold on, I can tell you where you can get that info. There we go. There we go. Okay, you can become a member today at batonrougegallery.org. You can also find out about all of the nifty stuff we have going on, including the Flat Curve Gallery, this Artist in Residences program, and so much more. We have an artist membership of over 60 of some of the best artists in the region. So I encourage you to take a look at our website so that you can see everything that everybody's making. Briefly, I want to talk about the Flat Curve Gallery. The Flat Curve Gallery is an online gallery space where we encourage artists of any age, any career level or not career level. We've had artists as young as 3 and 2 submit work. We've had artists who have work in permanent collections in museum spaces submit work. It really is a space for everybody to share their creativity with others and share with us what you've been making since March 13th, which was when the COVID crisis was deemed a national emergency. So anything you've made since then, please send it to the Flat Curve Gallery. That's going to be batonrougegallery.org. You can see the website information below. Okay, now that that is out of the way, welcome to my studio. I have 3 artist members who are going to join me today. First is our, three artists that are going to join me today. We have 1 artist member, 1 artist who participated in our Flat Curve Gallery, and 1 community artist who is a poet. So that will be Nonney Oddlokken, Thomas Wimberly, and Donnie Rose. So I'll bring them on in just a moment. Our first guest, Nonney Oddlokken, she has been an artist member with the gallery since 2017. She is a native of New Orleans. She shows regionally, nationally. She has artwork in the Southern Ohio Museum of Art's permanent collection. Sorry, it's live, so I gotta look at my notes. That's the name of the game. Her work is inspired by regional folklore. She uses handmade papers, found imagery, embroidery, and thread to illuminate and illustrate her work. So without further ado, I'm going to slowly and awkwardly bring on Nonney Oddlokken to the show. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There's
Okay.
a little bit of an audio delay, so we'll just do our best not to talk over each other when possible, and hopefully our audience will be forgiving. So not.
Oh, I can't hear you. Um, can't hear you. So I'm Nani.
Sorry, Nani.
That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry. It's a delay, but yeah, I can see your
Okay.
mouth maybe.
Well, that's good. Something. All right. So I was just asking, how are you doing? How are you keeping yourself sane?
Well, it's been difficult. Creativity is not flowing right now. I think that is going on with a lot of the artists. It's a little bit difficult. I find that some artists are doing fabulous, and then some artists are really struggling with their creativity. And I am one of those artists that are struggling with creativity, but it's getting better.
Yeah, I completely understand. As a studio artist myself, I feel like keeping a routine has been super helpful. So making sure that you clock into your studio as much as possible. Keep regular hours. Wake up when you normally wake up. Put on work clothes or whatever you need to do so that it makes it feel like you're in your normal routine, keeping your day going. For sure, for sure.
I think that's great advice, and I had a lot of trouble with that, like a lot of trouble. Just I'd sort of wake up when I wanted to, and normally, my kids are in school, and I'm able, I get up when my husband leaves, and I get out from my son when he leaves at 6:30. So I'm up, but without that routine, it was really bumpy. It was very bumpy, and plus the sadness of COVID, it's crazy. It's mind blowing with all the stuff that's going on. I am not seeing you.
Sorry, we're all learning this tech, and it's
Yeah,
it's
no.
it's a bit of juggling on the back end here, so just bear with me. Nani, I wanted to talk about
Mm,
some work, so I am going to share my screen and pull up some artwork of yours so that we can talk about uh, what it is that you've been making and the stories behind it. So let me add my screen to the stream. All right. So Nani, let's start up here towards the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about this piece?
So it's very important for me and my art to have a narrative. And going back a little bit,
Oh,
oops, what happened?
1 second.
I was living in, I grew up in New Orleans and never went to the swamps, never went, really, literally outside of New Orleans. I had really bad allergies. So the minute I got right outside the city, I would have allergies, I would have asthma. So I found it to be pretty miserable and would always avoid it. After Katrina, we moved to St. Rose. And to get just by milk, I had to drive through the swamps. And it was the first time I really had um, any kind of encounter with Louisiana nature. And so I drive through the swamps, and it's about, I don't know, about 4 or 5 miles long. And it took me a couple of minutes. So every time I would drive through, I would notice the changes in the swamps. Like sometimes, some points of the year, the whole swamp has yellow flowers. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really started noticing the changes and totally fell in love with it. I started really appreciating the little critters and just the things that I was seeing on a normal basis. Um, with this piece here, um, I really believe in creating your own iconology, things that mean something to you, maybe not to anyone else, but to yourself. And here it's full of it. So all my work is highly symbolic. Everything in the pieces I have researched, um, both their spiritual meaning and their physical meaning. Um, I just use indigenous um, elements. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, start here with the white alligator. I think like the white alligator is sort of the unicorn of the swamps. I don't think you can get any, I guess, more beautiful, more iconic than the white alligator.
Do
And
white
so,
alligators, do they
what's
actually
that?
exist? Are white alligators actually a thing? Like that's real?
Yeah, they have them at the zoo. You've never seen it? So
No.
a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of decades ago, I guess, they found 5 white alligators. And so they had one at the Audubon Zoo. They still have it. They recently had one at, well, they always had one at the aquarium, but it passed away not too long ago, I believe. Um, but yeah, so they actually exist. And to me, they're just magical. Um, so the more I started looking into Louisiana indigenous, the more I fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more interesting it got. Like I remember, so there's a spoonbill here, and the roseate spoonbill,
I'm here.
and I remember the day that I found out that we have these birds in not just Louisiana, like in my neighborhood. I
Yeah.
almost started crying because I couldn't believe something that beautiful existed, even though it is incredibly an awkward bird, right? But it was just so cool that we have these big, bright pink birds. And like, in my, I literally was walking on the levee one day and saw them. So,
Yeah. As a transplant out here, I think one of the most amazing things that I noticed straight away was all of the, especially the normal birds that live here all the time, but the seasonal birds that come in, like when that big flock of pelicans comes in and takes over the lakes, that blew my mind the first time I saw. I had never, I came here from California, and we have seagulls and really fat pigeons, and that's kind of it. So the first thing I noticed out here was just the abundance of different bird and animal types that are just around, just in your backyard. Like you said, it's really amazing.
yeah, we have a pond in our backyard, and every once in a while we'll get egrets that are like looking at the fish. So I'll walk outside and there's this big bird in my yard, which is fabulous. I don't want them to eat my fish, but it's fabulous to see them
Mm-hmm.
right in nature. It was just right there, right
Yeah.
literally outside my window. Um, so with this particular piece, I would drive through the swamps into Winn-Dixie on Airline Highway. And on Airline Highway, you're sort of level with the swamp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I would just constantly watch it. And I really wanted a celebrational piece, like a celebratory piece. And I kept thinking, what could bring all the animals to the surface to celebrate? It's a Ufole. Like what could that day be? And just short of that, or right after that, excuse me, we had a lunar, a lunar eclipse. And so, the moon got really bright red. So I thought that would be the perfect the night. Like that would be the celebratory night. And the little critters here, they're all bringing beets. And I use beets as a symbol of the spirit or the soul, because if you've ever held a live beet, if you shave it, you peel it, it bleeds. It's like the size of a heart, and it bleeds. And I just think they're amazing vegetables. So they're all carrying uh, sacrificial beets to the central figure on the lunar
Mm-hmm.
eclipse side. And then
Let me. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
I work with a lot of skeletons, and that's just in traditional art. It's the symbol of mortality, to just remind yourself that your life here is just a tad. So make the best of it. So I
Yeah.
use a lot of these symbols over and over again in different ways.
Yeah.
Did
I'm
you?
noticing also something that's common in your imagery specifically. Let me get to another image I want to bring up real quick. Um, I guess we can go ahead and hop to this one just briefly.
Yeah.
Is that there's the circles. Oh, I guess we're going to that one. The circles around the eyes on all of your figures. Can you tell us what these mean?
Those indicate they're enchanted. They're the enchanted creatures that live among us that you may or may not recognize. They reach out to you, they see you, they study you, even though you don't always see them. And all the critters, everything, every living thing in my pieces are enchanted. So they all have the eye. And
Right.
then,
Otherwise, why would you part about them, right? Unless they're enchanted.
yes, yeah. So what would be the point of putting them in there if they're not enchanted?
Exactly. Yeah.
This piece here, um, where was I going with this?
Well,
So
we put the title here for those that can see it. It's the Raising Brahma in the Bayou of Divinity.
yes. So This one I stretched a little bit with the folklore because of Brahma, but I like the idea that this is about motherhood, and she is raising a deity, but it's still screaming babies. It's still the
Hmm.
everyday. Um, but just short of the little babies, I really play around with conjoined things, be it alligators. I like the idea of the fork of the road. You know,
Hmm.
the challenges that come, the yes or no's, the should I go right, should I go left. I play around with that a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
folks can kind of see that a little bit in your work. We have another conjoined one here somewhere. Oh, maybe we took it off the site. That's okay. Briefly, let me check and see if we have any questions from the audience. Hold on one second. Let's take that off. Okay. All right. Just general niceness from the audience here. Thank you guys. We appreciate all of this. Okay. One last thing I want to ask Nani before you go is what are you working on? What is this thing behind you?
so this is a, I'm trying to move so you can see. So this is a 9 foot piece that I'm working on, and it's called the Coronation of the Swamp Queen. So they're trying to see it.
Let me see. Oh, sorry, Nani. Hold on one second.
Okay.
I tried to remove myself so that we could see your background bigger. Hold on. So go ahead and talk about that.
So this is definitely a work in process. It is another celebratory piece of the crowning of the Swamp Queen. You'll see spoonbills in there. To the right are moths, lunar moths. Oh, see, there's the conjoined alligator to the left, um, at least my left. Um, but you know, talking about being inspired as we go, I filled it up with moths up there. But we're in hummingbird season, so there's a tremendous amount of hummingbirds in my backyard, and I think I'm taking the moths down and filling up with hummingbirds because I was so taken by these amazing little baby creatures that are so adorable. So this is definitely a work in process. This is like phase one.
That's awesome. So you make your own background paper, and then you used a combination of handmade and drawn elements and found imagery. So it looks like what we're seeing behind you is just the very beginning phases, without any of the thread, without anything
Stitching,
being
yeah.
put in place.
I
Yeah,
call this
that's
the pattern part. Like it's sort of like the collage pieces that I'm putting together to give me, you know, to obviously create the piece. So once I'm happy with that, which I'm very far from being right now, I will take all the pieces down and you know and sew on them.
mhm.
So like some of the other pieces, you can see the elephant ears. Maybe there'll be like 70 of them. So it's, you know, again, it's loosely up there because there'll be things underneath. I want to have things swimming in the water. It's going to change a lot. But this is sort of just um, like if you think in Renaissance time, like the cartoon of a piece. So this sort of gives me direction on where.
Nani, we had a question from somebody in the audience. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Uh, Robert Sherman wanted to know, will COVID work into the mythology that you've developed?
Um, oh, I don't know. Probably not. If I had guessed, so I don't know how to. I don't know how to put that in an image other than you know this the stereotypical uh, mask on the
Sure,
faces.
sure.
You
Yeah, your
know,
work isn't about current events. It seems to be more about the narrative and the sort of through lines of storytelling in your life and in the region. So
yeah,
maybe.
it's more magical realism. You know,
Mhm,
and so
mhm.
and I do push and pull on mythology. So like there's some Cajun stuff that I love, and then I'll stick it in there, but I'll stretch it a lot. You know.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so, and one of the things is that like um, the Cajun werewolf is not a wolf here. Well, it's not the same as the traditional werewolf. Here,
Right.
the loop guru is only a loop guru for 101 days. So, and with that, there are no indigenous wolves in Louisiana. So I changed them all to foxes. So whenever you see a fox, it's a symbol of a loop guru in my work. So again, it's like pulling and pushing on folklore, and really trying to work with the indigenous creatures of Louisiana to keep it authentic.
All right. Well, thank you, Nani. Tell me, where can our audience find you online?
My website is threadpaperglue.com. Nobody
Let's
could
see if
ever
I can.
spell my name right, so I went with thread paper glue because the chances are they'll spell that. They'll get those 3 words right. But yeah, thread paper glue, and you can always find me through Baton Rouge Gallery.
Okay, let's see if I can put a link to your website up.
And the same thing, it's Instagram. I have
There we
thread paper glue on Instagram as well.
Hopefully I spelled that right on the fly.
Thread paper
All
glue.
right, Nani. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate everything you do. Hope we get to hear from you very soon.
Oh yeah, so my next exhibition in Baton Rouge at Baton Rouge Gallery is in December. So
Oh,
hopefully all this stuff will be gone and we'll be back to regular. Oh, dear God, I hope we're back to regular life in December. You know.
or
So
something close to regular life. Goodness, we better
yeah,
be. Well, thank you,
please.
Nani. Have a good afternoon.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Okay. Very briefly, let me just introduce our next guest, Thomas Wimberly. He was a Baton Rouge native, has now moved to the West Coast. While he was here, he opened up a studio, which was a shared studio space and occasional pop-up space called Unit 7. Now he serves as the art director for Shepard Fairey's project space called Studio Number 1. Thomas Wimberly is on the show today because he participated in our flat curve gallery. I will show that image in just a moment. But since he shared his work with us, that work has gone on to morph and be published in amazing places like the New York Times. So he's a great example of an artist just responding to what we're all going through and sharing that work with the world. Let me bring him on. Thomas, let's get you on the stream.
Hey, how's it going, Kelsey?
Hello. How are you?
Doing good. Just keeping to ourselves. Just trying to stay low amidst the chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your quick tip for staying sane?
Quick tip for staying sane. I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure it out. We have a dog, and he's been pretty helpful in easing some of that anxiety. But other than that, I guess that's a day-by-day experience trying to figure out exactly how to stay sane. So I think
I wanted to quickly pull up the image that you shared with us to the Flat Curve Gallery just so people can see it. So this image here is the one that you had sent in. Please bear with me while we get it pulled up. Oh boy. Yay, learning new tech. Okay. So we can briefly touch on this one and then kind of roll back just a little bit to what got you to where you are now. But this piece is what you shared with us. And then tell me a little bit about how it evolved into this piece here. My StreamYard thing, hang on. It's blocking my, there we go. It evolved into this piece here, is that right?
Yeah, so it basically started out with the US version, just because I could personally attest to the sacrifice and the hard work that a lot of the working class was putting in. It ended up kind of materializing itself in more specific to the medical field, just because they were, actually at the front line of the current pandemic. And so I named it Forefront, had my wife as a reference that I use for the mask and her eyes and whatnot. But my work is typically pretty critical of our country and society as far as the areas I think that it can tighten up or maybe need to address. And so I thought that, a change of pace and just a really positive image would be best served for for this time and place. And then eventually it evolved into the global one whenever I spoke with Amplifier, on creative art and design kind of activist group. And we spoke about how they wanted to use it, but it would be nice to have it appeal to a larger audience. And after talking to a few of my collectors and whatnot, specifically one in Germany, she had mentioned about how she loved the American one, but it would be nice to have one that she could relate to. And so I adjusted it and came up with this global version.
And this is the one that's been published, just the global version in the New York Times.
Correct. Yeah.
And a couple of other places too.
Yeah, it's LSU did an article yesterday that I was really thankful for. It was really well put together. But yeah, this one's definitely getting a lot of the heat, mostly just because of the global aspect. But in this example on screen, it was projected along with a few other artists onto the side of a hospital in Manhattan. This one was, as well as the US one. And so what we did was we took both of them and applied thank you and, messages of gratitude at the bottom. And we did that in, I think we're up to like 16 different languages right now, give or take. And so
and you have them available for download, right?
Yeah, if you go to amplifier.org, you can download, the whole slew of all of them, as well as a bunch of other artists' really incredible work.
That's amazing. Let's go back just a little bit. Let me go to the other view here where I can see more of your work. It looks like we can see a sort of a timeline of the work you've made. Some of it looks like maybe more Louisiana-centric, like over here you have Louisiana Marathon, and others are a little more national in focus and intention. I wanted to just scroll through a few of these here.
Sure.
Wish that wouldn't happen, but here we are. Okay. So this piece, tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this one was my first diptych that I'd ever put together, entitled Yearbook. The one on the left is called Detention, and then the one on the right is Summa Cum Survivor. Basically, this was my personal assessment in response to just the sheer number of mass shootings that we have. And whenever it was first being discussed about arming teachers, this was my answer to what I considered not quite the right approach to things. So it's a bit of a spoof, the left is, at least the Detention one, as far as like arming teachers and kind of having this almost angel of death, patrolling the halls for good intents, but maybe in my opinion, not exactly the right method to solve things, with adding more of what's causing the problem.
I can't imagine being a high school student right now.
Oh, yeah.
It must be so intense. Let's scoot to this next one over real quick. I feel like, what I really appreciate about your work is the quick recognition that the audience has behind the content. You're really right on the pulse of everything, at least in the US, that's happening, that's getting global attention. This one being, I assume obviously a reference to the kids in cages.
Yeah, specifically like the separation of families and whatnot. Granted, the policy had been in effect longer than the public became aware of it. Obviously it came to a head, but I try to keep my work pretty topical because I'm not the best at articulating my own views on things, but I find that whenever I can craft imagery to do that for me, I can usually get my point across a little bit more. So yeah, that was an answer to that. Like I said, just try to keep things topical. Yeah.
And it looks like the way you work, you can scale it, it looks like, to just about any size, apparently.
Yeah, I went to LSU. I have a BFA with a focus in graphic design. And so all my work is vector, so it can be scaled to any size. It's based on mathematic equations as opposed to pixels themselves. So it can be scaled to any kind of size. This was a piece that I did at my day job, where I'm an art director at Studio Number 1, Shepard Fairey's design agency. This was done through Studio Number 1, so it's not my own work by myself. I I just have to make sure it's given credit that this was through my day job.
Absolutely.
But this was work with the CBD company Charlotte's Web that we're doing a big campaign, and we did this poster, and then after that they had me adjust it to be a large scale mural that I believe is in Manhattan as well right now.
Wow. So I know that a lot of your work is done digitally, but not all of it. It seems to be like there's sort of a collage element, a screen print element. Can you tell us about your how you make the work you make?
Sure. Yeah. So everything starts out digital, I guess is a better way to put it. And for screen prints, that's the best method to kind of have that translate, because everything's pretty much all ready to go. A lot of the collaging and the pieces, the actual art pieces are aerosol, collage, and a little bit of screen print. And that's based on the resources and the research that I did pertaining to my current boss, Shepard Fairey. That's a lot of his the methods that he uses as well. And so while I'm going through my own artistic journey and still, referencing my inspirations and whatnot, I used to do the collage a lot more back then. Things are slowly starting to tune into something I think I can claim as a bit more my own, while the inspiration is still apparent. But I liked the idea of layering in different things. So for instance, like on the yearbook pieces, they had like newspaper articles. This piece, the blue one, I called Damaged. It's a reference to Black Flag's not titular record, but one of my favorites from them. But this is all, there's no collage in here. It's a little bit of my newer work. This is all spray paint. There is some rough texture within the piece based on just building up some acrylic medium, as well as a few other like crackle sprays and things like that. But this is kind of more the direction of where I'm going. So like I said, slowly not shedding my inspirations, but trying to fine tune exactly what I like from them and mix them all together to be whatever it is that mine is. Yeah, this was a print that I did last year called Murky Depth, and it's just a reference. I have a friend in Huntington Beach that kind of, we were talking about how like terrible the beaches were getting, and just, it's more of a statement on pollution and unfortunately our typical approach to just dealing with it rather than fixing it. And so this guy's still enjoying the surf while, trying to protect himself. It's more of a statement on
open up the beaches, make everyone wear that mask, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, let me see here. Let me see if we have any questions from the audience. Hold on just a second. Get my screen out of here. Okay, so let me go over here. I'm sorry, everybody in the live audience. Please forgive some of the technical slowness. I promise that these will get a little more elegant as we go, and as each of us as host gets used to juggling all the stuff on the back end here. Like, I could totally take this off. There we go. Okay. Right. All right. Thomas, one last thing I want to ask is about your pets. I need to know. Tell me everything.
I've just, Brooke and I, my wife, we have a English bulldog named Mac, short for Macintosh, and he'll be 10 this summer, so he's been around for a minute.
Yeah, no, bulldogs are sweet. You're out in California, right?
Yeah, we've been here in LA since beginning of last year.
Did you know in Long Beach there is a specific dog beach called Rosie's Beach?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't. We haven't been out there yet. There's pretty strict neutering laws out here, and my boy isn't exactly clipped, so we've been trying to keep him away from really big populations for the sake of not getting busted on that.
No, we just broadcasted this on live.
And he's more of a stay in. He's definitely an apartment dog. He just likes to chill on the couch. So, But yeah, we might have to check that out once this opens up, because things have definitely changed.
Yeah, it's a great little spot. I used to live. That's where I did my undergraduate degree. Was out at Cal State Long Beach,
Oh,
and
nice.
I used to take my dogs onto the dog beach, and they have parades, and it's a whole dog city out there. It's worth looking into since you're out on the West Coast.
I have to check
All right,
that out.
Thomas, I will not keep you any longer. You can get back to enjoying your afternoon. Thank you so much for being a part of the broadcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Okay, as promised, we have one more guest to bring on. His name is Donnie Rose. Donnie Rose is a Baton Rouge resident. He is a poet, teacher, artist, humanitarian, just all around amazing good guy. Donnie is the founder of the Black Out Loud Conference. He was a 2018-2019 Citizen Artist Fellow at the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. He's published several books. He's been published in several publications like the Atlanta Black Star, Blavity, HuffPost, the New York Times, and so many others. I wanted to bring him on today. He's been making work recently in response to this crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, and all the quarantine. And I want to see what he has to say about it. So let's pull him on. Donnie, welcome. Oh, sorry, I gotta unmute you. There we go. Donnie, welcome.
Hey, Kelsey, how you doing?
I am fumbling through this live broadcast, but hopefully people are not here for me. They are here for the guests, and we'll get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you if you could talk just at the very beginning briefly about your recent American Audit performance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know this was originally something performed live on a stage, and with the recommendations for social distancing and self-quarantine, you moved it on to a Facebook and Instagram live platform. Tell me a little bit about what is the American Audit, and what was it like to switch gears midstream from going to performing it in front of people to performing it in your house?
Sure. So the American Audit is a multimedia spoken word project that involved me writing a multitude of kind of separate pieces that kind of fused as one. It also involved me interviewing historians and cultural experts and collecting all kinds of different imagery. And basically, what the American Audit is, it's an extended metaphor in which America is a business being audited by Black Americans 400 years post Jamestown, the first slaves arriving in Jamestown, Virginia. And so originally I began working on the American Audit in 2019, which was the 400-year anniversary mark of the first documented slaves arriving in Jamestown, Virginia, and it continued into the top of this year. So I debuted the American Audit on February 28th at the Manship Theater, and it was a sold-out crowd. I had the one show in the Hartley Bay Studio Theater. Well, I had the one sold-out show and 3 other school shows. So altogether, I had 4 different runs of the American Audit. Great audiences. Like I said, the main one sold out 150 plus people. And so once everything happened with the pandemic, I wanted to be able to, for one, keep myself in some degree of practice with delivering and performing the American Audit. So I decided to just share the written text of the American Audit and perform that via Instagram. Some of the other components, such as the video and the imagery, was a little difficult to try to maneuver online, but I knew that I could, if nothing else, pull out my binder in which I had the poems in and share the work that way. And the thing that was cool about it was that there were a lot of people that were unable to make the debut back on February 28th because they lived out of town. Some people just had scheduling conflicts. So they were definitely, satisfied that I was able to come online and at least give a variation of the performance. So I, much like everyone else, have just been trying to navigate the uncertainty of this time and also trying to utilize technology to the best of my ability. And so Instagram Live has been a friend, Zoom has been a friend, and these are things I've just been kind of utilizing to keep to keep myself engaged with my audience and also to try to usher in new audiences.
Sorry, trying to pull myself back on the stream here. Thank you.
Understood.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously we are friends. I see you on Facebook, and I missed the Facebook Live performance, and I caught just the tail end of the Instagram Live one, and I was really curious as to what the contrast was like. So thank you for talking about that. Now I know you have another project that you're working on right now in response to this COVID
Mhm.
crisis. If I can pull it up real quick, I'm going to share my screen again, everybody. So here we go on that wild ride. Hang on. It is the Kovach Chronicles. Tell me, what are the Kovach Chronicles? Who is humanity? What are we looking at?
All right, so Humanities Amp is a nonprofit organization here in Baton Rouge that believes in amplifying youth voice. It believes in young people civically engaging, and it believes in human connections in public schools. So that's the primary mission of Humanities Amp. I am a poetry educator with Humanities Amp. And so, just like with any other situation in the midst of this pandemic, we have been trying to figure out how to best service young people online through different workshops and programs and story circles. So, the COVID Chronicles is something that is actually open to more than just our youth community. What the COVID Chronicles is every week Humanities Amp posts three writing prompts in which people can respond to in any medium in which they see fit. So whether that's responding with a comment or a sentence or a poem or a small essay or a song lyric, that original lyric. So each week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we post a new prompt on Humanities Amp social media pages. On Instagram, it's Humanities Amp BR. On Facebook, it's just Humanities Amp. On Twitter, it's Humanities Amp BR. And so we allow folks the opportunity to basically just kind of write responses to whatever the prompt is. And it's twofold. One is to allow us to just kind of work with processing where we are in this time and in this moment. And the other thing is that it's for documentation purposes. So in the event that hopefully we're not in a place like this similar later on, but in the event that we are, we have a living archive of reflections that we can go back and look at and say, this is where we were in this time. These were the things that we were thinking. These were our thoughts. These were the ways in which we were processing. And also because Humanities Amp does a lot of what's called critical action participatory research with its students, what this allows is the young people at a later time to go back and do in-depth research projects using this kind of as a model and saying, this is where our society was at this time. This is where Baton Rouge was at this time. This is where, whomever who participates. And so it's completely open to the public to participate. The information
Yeah,
is at humanitysamp.com. So that's what the COVID Chronicles is about.
I was just going to ask: is it just local? Is it national? Is it open? And you caught me right before I thought to do that.
Yeah, one of the first submissions we got was from a young woman from Brooklyn, New York. So we definitely are. It's definitely wide open. This incident, this event that we know now as the COVID-19 pandemic, has in some ways shrank the world, um, in a sense to where we are all probably a lot more connected than we may have been before, just
Mhm.
because we're all kind of connecting via digital means, and so it's definitely a worldwide effort that anyone can be involved in.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's a lot of parallels between the COVID Chronicles that you're spearheading and our Flat Curve Gallery.
Mhm.
Just one visual and one's literary. I think that's fantastic. I'm so glad that this resource is out there for people.
Yeah, and
Uh,
also, Kelsey, we should talk a little bit offline because one thing that we want to get into in the coming weeks are visual art submissions of COVID Chronicles. So basically, someone can utilize the prompt, and if they are visual artists, they can submit content that's relative to the prompts via visual art.
oh, interesting. All right. Well, we will touch base outside of the live stream world about that. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
I also have pulled up here. It looks like you have an event coming up.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about what is this?
So I've been doing, as you mentioned before, a multitude of things. One, to kind of keep my sanity and keep myself busy and keep myself sharp. And so I've done performances of the American Audit. I've read just randomly some poems. I've facilitated some dialogues online. And next week, I'm going to be doing a collaborative performance with an artist by the name of Peter Simone, who is the front man for an indie band known as Manos the Saint. And so Peter and I, we've known each other. We've been friends for several years, and we talked a while back about doing a collaborative project. Life got away from us. We never did that. But I just kind of reached out to him the other day and said, man, what if we just jump online, do a couple of poems? I do some poems, you do some songs, and then we do some kind of cross collaborative improv stuff. And he was like, I'm with it. Because a lot of people are kind of sitting around figuring out what they want to do. So next Friday on my Instagram Live and on the Manos the Saint Live, Peter Simone and I will be jamming. I'll be doing poems, he'll be doing songs, we'll be doing some cross genre stuff, and that's just that's what it is.
Fantastic. So after people tune into our Friday artists in residences later on in the evening, they can jump onto your guys' Instagram, and we have entertainment for the whole day. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so let me get that out of here. And Donnie, I understand you have been writing work in response to the pandemic. Would you like to share any of that with us?
Yeah, I will. Let me just preface it by saying that April is known as National Poetry Month. And typically, a lot of poets participate in this idea of writing 30 poems in 30 days. And so I started on this kind of writing project I call Viral Voices. And it's a series of persona poems written in the voice of various identities of COVID-19. And a persona poem is essentially the poem in the voice of someone or something else. So each title of each poem kind of gives the subject of what's going to happen. I have a few of them. They're very brief, so I can just kind of run through them with you right now.
Excellent. Let me get out of here and let you do your thing.
All right. So the first poem I'm going to share is titled D Nice's Turntable for the Man Erased from Club Quarantine. D Nice, the legendary DJ who has blown up considerably in the course of the pandemic, as his Club Quarantine Instagram lives have been viewed by millions and millions of people. So here's the first poem. D Nice's Turntable for the Man Erased from Club Quarantine. Dear Mr. Jones and management of Club Quarantine, I can't recall the last time your establishment saw upwards of 500,000 people dance off the onslaught of illness within a 7-day span. And though I'm grateful to be the tables of choice, spinning the soundtrack to stay-at-home safety, I'm going to need an increase in salary, an expansive vacation package, and a better health care deal. You do not know what it means to need a therapist until you have heard the reverb of bodies dropping after the lights shut off. All right. Next poem. The N95 mask suffers an identity crisis. I can no longer recognize the mask in the mirror or the body contorting itself to fit so many changing faces. I did not sign up to be wartime defense. The cries of anguish are so piercing, and I am not shield enough to barricade the ambush of droplets launching from the mouths of the suffering, or the screams for ceasefire from the same civilians refusing to stay off the battleground until the white flag can replace the white sheet. All right. Next poem. Alexa announces a list of songs it won't play no matter how many times said songs are requested. Alexa, play I'm Sorry, the following songs are unavailable right now. Let's Stay Together, Touch Me, Tease Me, We Belong Together, Kissing You, I Want to Get Next to You, Come Close, I Would Die for You, I Get Around, Breathe and Stop, Love in This Club, Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Alexa playing Back, 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 Give Me 50 Feet. And the last poem I will share.
Real quick, Donnie, I had my mic muted, but every time you said my smart speaker's name, she was like, doo-doo.
Oh,
I'm sure I'm not the only one.
sorry about that.
All right,
So,
let's hop into this one.
here's the last poem. The Easter Bunny finds out why all the egg hunts have been moved inside. Here I was emerging from the rabbit hole I always fall into in search of fresh faces in pastel colors, and lo and behold, I could not hear a joyful scream for miles. I searched the skies for signs of downpour, but did not find any traces of overcast. So I hopped on down to the craft store, hunting for acrylic paint, and the sign outside read closed. And there was a pattern of closure for blocks, and I asked myself if all the kids were on punishment, then grabbed a copy of the local paper and found out they all indeed are. And those are some of the poems.
Those are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. If people wanted to find you or find your poems, find any of your work online, where should I send them?
So Instagram is a good location. My Instagram handle is Donnie Donney _Rose ROSE. I post like most of these poems. I think all of the poems that I've been doing through COVID-19. I do screenshots of them of the documents and I posted them, so they're all there. I also have a website which is DonnieRosePoetry.com, all spelled out DONNEYROSE poetry.com. I would say that those are probably the two best sources. The Instagram probably being the one ahead of the website. I actually need to update my website, and
So
so
maybe
but yeah, yeah.
And there's also I have the website pulled up for the Kovach Chronicles. For those who missed it earlier, this is the web address for that. So you can read the work, you can submit your own writing. I'm not sure what the rules are, Donnie. You'd have to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah,
And
so,
I'm sure the information is on the websites.
Yeah, everything is on the website for Kovach Chronicles. Essentially, like I said, we put out new prompts 3 times a week, and in between putting out the new prompts, we'll publish submissions that we received from the previous week. And so we publish them on the website and also via our social media, our Instagram, our Facebook. So, you can submit something and look for, in a couple of weeks, and you can find your written words out there in the atmosphere.
Oh, wonderful. All right, Donnie. Well, thank you so much for sharing your craft with us today, for sharing all these resources and your event that's coming up. I really appreciate you. Stay well. Stay socially distant.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Kelsey.
No problem. Take care, Donnie. All right, everybody. That has been today's episode of Artist in Residences. Stay tuned. Our next one is coming up on Tuesday. We're going to have a deep dive discussion with a couple of our artist members. We will be announcing the topic and the members later this weekend. I hope that you have enjoyed this program. Again, this wouldn't be possible without our donors and members and all of these wonderful artists in the community. All we're doing is bringing them together. Really, all of the stuff is happening because of the hard work of the artists in our communities and the people who support the gallery. So thank you again. I'm going to end the broadcast now. Take care. Have a good weekend.